Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to do a book review for Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab, which is the second and final book in the Monsters of Verity duology. The first book was The Savage Song, obviously, and then Our Dark Duet, and these books have the most delightfully beautiful covers ever. They are absolutely phenomenal. I finished reading Our Dark Duet the night before I'm filming this, and I am honestly reeling. It was every bit as dark and compelling as the first book in the series, and Victoria Schwab has definitely cemented her place in my world as a fantastic author. I really love her writing style and I love how different it is between the different books. And I know she's not for everyone, but I really enjoy her writing, and she's pretty much going to be an auto-buy author for me now, and I'm not even going to deny that. I'm going to get straight into my review of Our Dark Duet. I'm going to give a really brief summary. Obviously this is the second book in a series, so I don't want to give too many spoilers away at the start, and then I'll have a spoiler section at the end, but I'll clearly mark it so you guys can, if you haven't read it and you are planning on reading it, you can stop there and then come back and chat to me about it later. The Monsters of Verity is set in a world where violent crime literally creates monsters. These monsters are called the Corsai, the Malachi and the Sunai. They have very vampire-like traits, although perhaps the most vampire-like are the Corsai and the Malachi, as they both quite enjoy tearing people apart and drinking blood. The Sunai reap guilty souls, so they're a little bit different, and there's actually less of them. Each of these different types of monsters are created by different types of violent crimes. The entire series is dark and bloody and compelling. It is very fast-paced, and it follows two main characters, one of whom is Kate Harker, who is the daughter of Callum Harker, a man who rules the north of Verity, which is the town where these monsters have arisen. Callum Harker is kind of like a mob boss. He's done deals with the Malachi and the Corsai and keeps them in line in exchange for a tithe paid by the people who live in the north. Kate Harker has spent quite a bit of time away from Verity. After her mother passed away, she spent some time in a whole range of different boarding schools, and finally she's decided to come back to Verity and try to find a way back into her father's good graces by becoming just as vicious and hardline as he is. In contrast, we meet August, who is a Sunai, and he lives in the south of Verity with his family. He was taken in by Henry Flynn and his wife Emily, and they also took in two other Sunai, Ilsa and Leo, and together they formed the FTF, which was like a resistance force, and they try and guard the border between the south and north of Verity to stop the other monsters from crossing over. August is one of those monsters who wants to become more human. He questions himself in the first book and wants to try and be more human. After the events of this savage song, Kate has found herself in Prosperity, which is another town, and her actions in this savage song have changed her. She begins to understand the implications of what she was trying to achieve and what actually happened at the end of the book. Just like August, who has come to the realization that he doesn't really know why he was trying to become human anymore. So there's almost been not a role reversal, but there is a little bit of a shift in their perspectives, and that's where this story kicks off. At the start of the story, Kate has formed some tenuous alliances with a few young adults living in Prosperity, and together they begin hunting monsters that have started popping up in this town. Meanwhile, August has taken over his brother Leo's role in the FTF and is now leading raids out into the north and trying to evacuate as many people from the north of Verity as they can. Kate and August's world has always been very dark, but now there is a new monster who has arisen, and he feeds on chaos and on turning people against one another. Kate has to return to Verity, and August needs to decide who he wants to be amidst a world that is breaking apart. This book was very dark, very compelling. There is very minimal romance in this book. It is all about the path that these two characters take to finding out who they are and what they are willing to do in order to save the people that they care about, or to save the ideals that they care about. It is very emotionally charged right from the get-go, and ultimately it was a 5-star read for me. That is my spoiler-free review, and I am going now to go into all of the things that I absolutely loved. If you haven't read this book, please, please, please pause the video, read it, and then come back and come and talk to me about it, because I absolutely adore this book and I would love to talk to you about it as well. So now I'm getting into the spoilers. I really loved how this book opened up with Kate in Prosperity fighting monsters and hunting them down. Not only was it a nice contrast to the first book where we open it up and the story opens with Kate, so there's a nice parallel there, but it was really interesting to see how she's changed and how she's now forced to work with this group of people in order to do what she wants to do, which is hunt down as many of the monsters as she can. It was really interesting as well in the first few chapters to see how Kate has to deal with these people who genuinely care about her, but she doesn't understand why. And they want to help her and they want to be there for her, but she really doesn't let anyone in. I think that really sets a really strong pace for Kate's narrative through the whole book, because she locks people out and tries to do things her own way, just the same as she did in the first book, and it's really carried on through this, except she let August in the first book, and it's a really interesting contrast. I was actually really kind of devastated when we meet the new monster, the Chaos Eater as Kate calls him, and we then discover that Kate has been infected. But what I really loved was how Schwab really played with this notion that Kate is actively fighting the infection that she has. So that whole idea of this slither of silver in her eye slowly encroaching on her the whole time, slowly growing and becoming more and more powerful. I mean, that's creepy, but also the way that Kate fights and then tries to turn the connection that she has with the Chaos Eater back around and tries to track it down through that connection, I thought was really, really clever. I also like that when she's fighting the control of this Chaos Eater, you know, she's trying to retain her sense of self, but when she does let it go, when she's fighting Alice at the end, I think it makes that all the more powerful, that she's held on for so long and then she finally lets it go in order to survive. Speaking of Alice, Alice was a lovely, creepy juxtaposition with Kate, and she's the personification of everything that Kate was trying to become in the first book and then realized maybe that wasn't such a great idea, but her violent act of killing her father created this monster. She's created her monstrous self, which was what she was trying to do all along. But now she has such deep regrets about it. And I love how she didn't find out until the very end, and how that affected her. Like, she was really cross that no one had told her that Alice had made it back to Verity. You could see how much she'd hoped that Alice hadn't survived. And I thought that was really heart-wrenching. And Alice's relationship with Sloane, I really enjoyed reading those chapters because Sloane is so creepy and Alice is just disturbing. And Sloane now has this fascination with killing anyone who looks like Kate Harker, but yet he keeps this monster around who is this shadow version of Kate. Their dynamic was really, really fascinating and really creepy, and you can just tell these are two characters who don't care who lives and dies. It's not in their nature. These are monsters. They've been created by violence. And it was just so fascinating to read. They don't see things as right or wrong. And that's the best thing about villains. August is my precious little cinnamon roll and always will be. And it was really heartbreaking to read the first part of his story where he's being haunted by the ghost of Leo, who's dictating in his head the things that he should be feeling and the things that he should be doing as leader of one of the FTF strike groups. And you know, August is haunted and he's trying his best to do what needs to be done. He's sacrificing the part of himself that wanted to be human in order to do the thing that's going to keep everyone safe. And you can slowly see that descent from who he was into who he has to become, or who he thinks he has to become in order to keep people alive. I mean, he's darker and more jaded now, and that really affects his relationship with Ilsa, who remains one of my favourite characters. Her story is so sad, and I'll talk more about that later, but it affects his relationship with her because she was the one who was really encouraging him to become more human. And when August decides to throw himself full force into the FTF, you can see that part of her is really disappointed by that. And then August Descent is also noted by his cat Allegro, who reacts differently to him now that he's, you know, reaping souls more indiscriminately and so forth. He's embracing his inner monster, but at the expense of these relationships that he has with people and things that he cares about. I liked the addition of a new Sunai, Sorrow, and they were such a fascinating character. I loved how Victoria Schwab wrote Sorrow as identifying neither as male or female, just as Sunai, and it's just a natural part of things. And you know, everyone uses non-gender based pronouns when talking about them, and it was, you know, really interesting. And I liked how Sorrow was more black and white. They were more hardline on who was guilty and who wasn't, and that was, again, a nice juxtaposition with August. The chaos monster was very, very creepy. I love that it was a shadow figure and that it fed on creating chaos and turning people against one another, and then that was how it got its power, and that's how it was trying to make itself real. So where all of these other monsters, the Korsai, the Malachi, and the Sunai, were created out of these violent events, this monster was created somehow, and yet it wasn't. And in order to fully realize itself, it had to feed. And so where these humans who turned on each other and killing each other would have previously created other monsters, because they've been infected by the Chaos Eater, it's created this loop, and they create violence, but that violence feeds him rather than creating Korsai or Malachi. And I thought that was a really interesting way to twist these monsters, because it's such an interesting concept. Another thing I was really curious to see was whether Schwab included any romance in this book, because the first book there's no romance, but you could see that there was potential between Kate and August at some point if she decided to go down that path. And she did, but she didn't, and I really like that. There is one scene, and I really loved it, where August kisses Kate, and it's awkward, and it's at a moment of very high intensity, but it then becomes something else, because when August kisses Kate, he draws her soul to the surface, and because she's killed, she has a guilty soul, and so it's represented by that red light. And that freaks August out, because it didn't even cross his mind that by touching Kate that he could accidentally reap her soul. And, you know, that part, it makes him hesitate, and Kate laughs it off, and August is obviously rattled by it, and that's it. That's the entire scene. That's the one bit of romance in the book. And I really liked it because it was raw and it was real. I don't know. It makes everything that happens at the end all the more poignant, because Kate is August's friend and vice versa. I also really liked how once Kate gets to Verity and is taken in by the FTF, she becomes one of the people who constantly pushes them to make a decision, to do something, to take charge, to strike back, to try and outwit Sloane, because they're trying to use her and her knowledge of him to find a way to beat him. But she's going, well, you actually need to communicate with one another, you need to agree, and you need to decide to do something together, which is so interesting for her to be the one to do that, because she is the outsider and she is not welcome there, because she's the daughter of their former enemy. So I loved how she was that person who was constantly challenging and pushing and trying to get them to actually take a stand, which was also tied in with Henry Flynn being unwell, and it's an unnamed disease, but it's obviously killing him, and it's unspoken throughout the book, and he's trying to find a way of peacefully getting his council of leaders to start agreeing on a mutual course of action. So to have Kate come in and try and press the issue, I thought was a nice contrast between those two characters. Likewise, it was really interesting to see how Henry was trying to shape August into a leader for the group, and trying to not necessarily take away people's fear of August as a Sunai, but trying to make them see that he's more than just that, even though August doesn't understand why he's trying to do it. And then we get to the ending. I have no words. I figured that someone was going to die by the end, and I actually thought it would be August, but it was Kate and Ilsa, and that shattered me, because of all of them, Ilsa, I mean, granted, she died saving everyone, and she gave up her life to destroy this soul eater, and it was beautiful and it was poignant, and we got to see her Sunai self, and I really love that. It breaks my heart that she died, but I also love that Schwab did that. And I like that she's not afraid to kill off characters that people really like, and that are not bad characters. They're good characters, they're good people, or good monsters in this case. So that was really shattering. And then to have Kate die as well, in a really fitting way. She did what she set out to do. She helped to unite these people into action, and she gave up her life to protect them. And in doing so, it's sort of like this redemption arc for her, because she created a monster at the end of this Savage song, and we come full circle, and at the end she gives her life to kill that same monster. So yeah, I just found it poignant, and I was left at the end of the book just sitting there, and it's hard to process because I have such an emotional connection to these books, and it's so strange. In a lot of ways, I'm really sad that there are no more books in the Monsters of Verity series, but I'm also really pleased with how it wrapped up. And what's really nice is that I've now read 2 complete series of Victoria Schwab's, and I like how she wraps books up. She does such justice to her characters and her world, and I really appreciate that. So yes, I love this book. This is easily going to be up there with my favourite books of the year. It may even top Strange the Dreamer as my favourite book of the year. That is my review and wrap up of Our Dark Duet. It was long and rambly, and I apologise for that, but hopefully if you've watched this and you would like to start a conversation with me about Our Dark Duet, let me know in the comments or hit me up on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm always happy to discuss it. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I will catch you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye guys.